Alright everyone, let's run through Celtic's, let's call it a comprehensive victory over Hibernian yesterday. It was certainly a straightforward afternoon, and you can't really argue with it. John did join me for our match reaction that went out shortly after full time. So if you've not come across that yet, check it out. It's linked above. Today we're going to do the usual day after show. Just kind of run through some of the things I maybe missed out yesterday, some other thoughts, mainly some post-match thoughts of Brendan Rodgers as well, because there was some interesting stuff in there. It was an interesting post-match press conference. A couple of your comments as well, a few other bits of patter. Let's do it. It was job done yesterday at Easter Road. To be honest, probably a bit more than job done. Easter Road is a ground that we have struggled at in recent years. I was looking back actually just at how difficult a place it has been for us to go, and prior to yesterday we had 6 wins in 17 visits to Easter Road. That goes back to like 2012 or something like that. They spent a few years out of the top flight as well, but yeah, 6 wins in 17 games. So the majority of the time we don't go to Easter Road and win, and we certainly don't go and win so easily. So it was definitely a positive day yesterday, even if there was parts of our game that can clearly be a little bit better. I thought Hibs were extremely poor yesterday. I expected more from them. They really didn't offer much against us, and it was a very routine victory. The game was effectively over 20 minutes in when Callum McGregor thundered in that second goal. I don't think anyone, even the most optimistic of Hibs fans, or like Stevie, the most pessimistic of Celtic fans, could, sorry, that's already a dig at Stevie, would even have looked at that and said that it's going to end any other way other than a Celtic victory. I mean, the game was over at that stage. Some may even say it was as over as early as the 3rd minute when we got that opening goal. I think the confidence was clear to see going through the team, especially in that first half. That's the big thing I would say looking at them right now. They're just so confident. Virtually every player in that starting lineup right now is feeling good. It seems to be enjoying their football, but are doing it with a bit of discipline as well. And what I mean by that, and it's something John brought up yesterday, the chance that Kyogo misses at 1-0 where he puts it just past the post. I was watching that again in the highlights, and to be honest, as much as it's a bad Hibs mistake, it only really comes about as a result of how well we press them. And it's James Forrest, not the first player that would come to your mind in terms of pressing ability, but James Forrest just makes that press on the Hibs defender. Hatate's obviously doing similar, and it goes from a position of being very comfortable Hibs possession to Kyogo basically being sent through. And yeah, it's poor play, it's slack play from the Hibs player, but it only comes about because of the Celtic press. So I think as much as we're talking mainly about the great stuff we're doing on the ball, the movement, the passing, all the lovely wee things we've seen so far, and that is great to watch, I think what we're doing out of possession as well is just as important, and possibly more important as far as Brendan Rodgers is concerned. I think he's delighted with that part of the game so far this season. Players really know what they're meant to be doing, and they're really just buying into the effort that the manager's demanding. And I guess it's a lot easier when you're winning games as well, but it's been a really positive start to the season. So that's what we saw. I think for the first half an hour we were excellent. It was really, really good stuff. Maybe it was just a case of it all being a little bit too easy for us, because there was a bit of a drop-off. We obviously didn't score any more goals after 20 minutes, and you would have expected us to do that. I thought we still played a lot of really good stuff at the start of the second half. We missed a lot of chances. Callum McGregor hit the post, you remember that, deflected one. Kuhn ran onto that, could have scored. Kyogo was sent through by a brilliant Greg Taylor pass, should have scored. maybe just a little bit guilty of trying to walk the ball into the net. Kuhn was certainly the one that's on my mind when I say that. The amount of times that he could have got a shot away, and it just felt like he was wanting to beat the last defender and then get an even better angle to have a shot. And if we'd just been that bit more clinical, we would have scored more goals yesterday. Clearly the last 20 minutes of the game were pretty poor. Celtic were pretty poor. Brendan Rodgers is very clear in what happened at that stage, and he feels that the game just got a bit stretched rather than us playing through the lines with the short passing that we saw last week through pre-season and at the start of yesterday's game. We did go a little bit direct. I mean, I remember Greg Taylor playing a number of passes over the top for Maida, and they didn't really come off. And again, maybe it was just a case of it being a little bit too easy, more a little bit of a comfort zone. But generally, a really good job yesterday. And as I say, I'm probably nitpicking slightly, but we'll come on to some Brendan Rodgers comments on that. Just first of all, WeeJ72 getting in touch. That game clearly showed that we are needing quality for going forward into Europe. Come on, Celtic, get your finger out. I don't personally feel that yesterday told us anything that we didn't know already. We know that we've got the guts of a really exciting Celtic team right now, but we know that we need quality in a number of positions. I think everyone virtually agrees that we need a centre-back, a left-back and a striker signed before the deadline. That absolutely has to happen as far as I'm concerned. And then you can maybe look at a couple of other positions, and obviously the big Matt O'Reilly thing that's going on. I just think there's, and this will not be a major shock to you, I think there's such a gulf right now between Scottish football, where we are the best by a good bit, and that's very obvious, and probably the majority of games we'll play this season, a lot of them will be similar and to yesterday, and probably as easy as yesterday. But then we're trying to just make strides at that top UEFA Champions League level, and we've not been able to do that up until this point in recent years. So I just think it's such a challenge to go from games like yesterday, where you're playing against a really, really poor Hib side, to then match yourself against the best. So, we do have our work cut out in that regard, but I guess that's just, what we need to do. We need to get on with it and really try and build the best Celtic team we can, and build a Celtic team that can compete at Champions League level. As I've said, with some quality additions, I think at the very least we can target a top 24 spot, but we need those players in. Mantis Toboggan MD, Kuhn played well, but he was getting on my nerves with how often he was refusing to shoot. It was like he was trying to score the perfect goal. He still played well though, and looks a vastly improved player from the guy who turned up in January. Our second half subs kind of highlight that we really don't have much depth in certain positions. Schmeichel looks a massive upgrade on Hart in terms of distribution from the back. Just on your Kuhn point, I'm really excited about Nicholas Kuhn. Brendan Rodgers seems to think that it's just time that has allowed Kuhn to get to this point. He also thinks he's got real variety in his game now. Kuhn can go inside or outside, and that's a point that I definitely agree with. You look at our other wingers, and fine, I think it's fair to say James Forrest can probably do both. Dyson Maida is very much a player who runs down the line. Lewis Palma is very much a player who cuts in. I think Nicholas Kuhn, what he has is just that variety in his game that maybe none of our other wingers really have. And I think for me personally, that's what makes him so exciting, because you get the impression watching Nicholas Kuhn that he's a guy that can really impact matches and become like a top player for us, a kind of player we can hang our hat on in the big games to produce a bit of magic. He's obviously still got to do that, but to be fair to him, he's not had many starts in big games. I think only at Ibrox probably. We've obviously not seen him in Europe yet, but I'm really excited by Nicholas Kuhn. I agree with you. I mean, it's a point I made earlier in the video that I thought, yeah, he could have got his shot off a little bit quicker yesterday, because he got into some really good areas. There was one in the first half where, I mean, it was great skill, because he skinned about 4 Hibs players, but he should have got a shot off far quicker than that. There was 2 or 3 in the second half where he got into good areas and should have hit it. But generally, so excited by Nicholas Kuhn, and he scored 2 goals already this season, which is big, and that's a point Brendan Rodgers made after the game as well. If you're a winger At any club, but especially at a team like Celtic, you need to be able to score goals. And he actually referenced Matt O'Reilly. You know, you can't go 6 months into the season and get your first goal like Matt O'Reilly did season before last. I think it was mid-February, pretty sure, against St Mirren when Matt O'Reilly scored his first goal of the season. You can't do that, and obviously that's had an effect on Matt O'Reilly because he's turned into this unbelievable player. And you hope that something similar can happen with Nicholas Kuhn. I mean, as I say, he's got 2 goals already. He scored a few in pre-season, didn't he? So, yeah, I'm really excited to see how many goals and assists he can net this season and just be a real top player for us. As I say, a guy who can produce really big moments, and we can look forward to that. Just generally on Brendan Rodgers' press conference, yeah, he's certainly feeling it. I think if there's any doubt about Brendan Rodgers being back, it's over now. Certainly this time last year, we were all scratching our head a little bit because it was all just a little bit strange. And Rodgers has spoken about that himself, coming back, etc. But he's definitely back now, and he's definitely the Brendan Rodgers of the previous era. And there was a couple of interesting moments in his press conference. And by the way, you can watch this on the Celtic Ways YouTube. They've got that up in full, so please check that out above. He got a little bit short, let's just say, with a couple of journalists. One near the start got his whole thing he'd said about a Chelsea player coming up to him and saying, this is a Brendan team, where the journalist got it wrong and put it forward as a coach, having said that to Brendan Rodgers. And rather than letting it slide, he was very quick to say, no, it wasn't a coach, it was a player. And it got a little bit awkward, probably for about 10 or 15 seconds. And there was also, he gave the line, you can write whatever headline you want, I'm not going to criticise the players today, after a question about the team missing some chances. Now, Rodgers had actually brought that up, but he'd said, if I'm being picky, I would want the team to be a little bit more ruthless in front of goals. But the minute it was actually put to him, and there was just a negative slant in the question, he was very quick to shoot that down and back the players up. So that's a little bit of a continuation from the end of last season as well. I think he's happy at the moment with where the team are at, and I'm not sure he's got much time for negativity at the moment about anything, to be honest. Even transfers, I don't think he's got that much time for that kind of thing. But equally, second half yesterday, he wants it to be better. So he mentioned that, but I think generally very pleased with where the team are at. He also gave this face when he was asked if he felt for Steve Clarke in losing Callum McGregor as a player. That's definitely some meme content, as the kids would maybe say, I don't know. Yeah, very clear how Brendan Rodgers feels about Callum McGregor's decision. He also spoke a bit about Kyogo's role in the team, and I think this is probably the most insight we've had from the manager on Kyogo and the role he is playing in the team. I don't need him to be scoring 40 goals a season. It took him a bit of time to understand that for me, it's not always on the last line. I wanted him to play the space rather than the position. We all know he can go into depth, like we see for the first goal. But the modern game, especially with man-to-man marking, creates that possibility on the inside. You need the striker to be available and not always running away from the ball. He's playing the space really well. He's running in behind. He's coming short. So it's about space for Kyogo in a Brendan Rodgers team. And whether that space is achieved by him coming short, like he did a number of times yesterday in the previous week, or whether it's about him going long like he did for the first goal, it's about the space rather than Kyogo doing the same thing. And I guess that gives him variety, and I guess being an opposition defender, you're less sure about what Kyogo's going to do. He's not always going to run in behind. Equally, he's not always going to go short. I think that was maybe the issue last season, was that we're seeing a lot of Kyogo coming short, not a lot of him going in behind. And I certainly feel that that's where Kyogo's at his best, when he is running behind high line defences like we saw for that first goal yesterday. That is Kyogo for me. But Brendan Rodgers obviously wants him to play in this way. And listen, Kyogo's a very able footballer. He can link up the play nicely. Like, he's an intelligent player even when his back's to goal. So I thought that was interesting. So just when you're watching Kyogo from now on, have the word space in your mind, because that's what Brendan Rodgers wants from him in a nutshell. He wants him to find the space and be available, I guess, for midfielders and not always just running in behind. That may make a difference in matches where, and let's be fair, the majority of them are going to be like this in Scottish football, where defences are packed in behind. Yesterday was slightly different because Hibs away is one of the few games where you're probably going to get the opposition coming at you, because that's how Hibs play. But maybe this weekend, for example, at Celtic Park against Hibs, where they'll probably be a little bit more defensive, it gives Kyogo the option to go towards the ball and find space that way. So yeah, I think that was very interesting insight, and it's clearly working at the moment. Kyogo's been brilliant, even though he's not getting his goals at the moment. He did really well yesterday. It was a good performance. He felt soreness, his shoulder popped out again, no reason to risk him, Brendan Rodgers says. In terms of the other injury updates, Mikey Johnson felt a bit dazed and was brought off as a precaution. It was a concussion sub, pretty sure, late on in the game. Alistair Johnson felt some tightness. There was no reason to risk him with Anthony Ralston on the bench, says Brendan Rodgers. And finally, Lewis Palma, who was absent from the matchday squad. He'll be missing for around 10 to 14 days. That was as a result of that really nasty ankle moment he had at the end of the Kilmarnock game last weekend. I think he played on from that, but probably wasn't the wisest decision. So he's going to miss probably a couple of weeks, Lewis Palma. And yeah, we're into a new week, but the same topics of conversation will continue, I guess. We're going to hear a lot about Matt O'Reilly this week. There's actually been reports that Atalanta are preparing a 5th bid for O'Reilly. So we'll wait and see on that. Adam Ida is going to be a big topic of conversation this week. John wants it done early this week, and if not, he wants to move on to another player. Yeah, it's not ideal having Mikey Johnson as our second choice striker in 2024, is it? I'm optimistic Adam Ida will be in shortly, let's just say. Maybe in time for this weekend. We're playing Hibs again, this time in the Premier Sports Cup, so that'll be good. And yep, league table wise, we are still top of the table. Aberdeen the only other side with a 100% winning record. So they made a good start to the season under their new manager. We play them on match day 8 at Celtic Park. Okay, that's your lot, everyone. Thanks for watching. Chat to you tomorrow.